host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into this week's episode. What we want to know is there proof of alien civilizations, and did extraterrestrials influence the prevailing life on Earth? And to do that, we're going to be speaking with Will Hart. Will's a journalist, photographer, and filmmaker who has been investigating ancient mysteries and evidence of extraterrestrial intervention on Earth since 1969. He's the author of the book, The Genesis Race, and his new title, Alien Civilizations. And so please welcome to Just Energy TV, Will Hart. Hi, Will, how are you?
Hi, Rita. I'm fine, thank you. And I just wanted to say to begin with that I really appreciate being on your program because, unlike some of the hosts, you actually read the author's books. And I'm serious, and you know, I'm not going to mention names, but you really do, and I think any author appreciates that because you get a more in-depth and content-directed interview.
Well, and I think it's important to come into an interview prepared to basically pick the person's brain and provide information for people. That's my thought.
Absolutely. It makes it, you know, it enriches the conversation, and that's what this is all about. People want to know, and they want to get some depth and get another perspective, and you bring that to the table.
Well, I always joke around, it's like, I want the meat. We want meat.
Exactly.
And so we're going to get some today.
Yes.
So
the best I can do.
Let's start here. The current view on the development of life on Earth states that a bunch of miscellaneous inorganic chemicals and amino acids somehow mixed together to form the first cellular life form, and through the survival of the fittest, we evolved into what we are today. Based on your research, is this concept viable?
No, and that's still going back to the Darwinian spontaneous generation of life on Earth, which is a closed system view of it. And science still holds on to that, yet it's fallen apart because even back in the 19th century, Louis Pasteur and other scientists as well tested it, tried to see if anything would grow in a sterile medium, and nothing ever did. And it won't. So it, you know, life begets life, and the early Earth was very inhospitable to life. It was a very toxic environment, and it took a long time to come around. And in my view, and in the view of the scientists that I took the theory directed panspermia from and added on to it, life didn't originate on Earth. It originated elsewhere and came to Earth after the Earth was prepared.
And that's the panspermia concept, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, well, panspermia is undirected. That pretty much states that life is out there, and through cosmic objects, meteors and whatnot, it gets transmitted from planet to planet. That's one theory. Directed panspermia kind of is the hard version of that. It takes it to the level that there was an ancient civilization that evolved long before anything happened on the Earth. And part of its mission is to spread life, and it spread it to the Earth.
And it's interesting because I've never heard that viewpoint tied to panspermia. Well, I have to take that back. William Brown, I think he's a physicist, who I had on the show, and that was his belief, was that it was a directed panspermia. And I was like, I was so excited to actually hear someone in the scientific community say that out loud.
Well, actually, and most people don't know about it because it was, it couldn't be followed up at the time, but Leslie Orgel and, the co-inventor, the co-discoverer of DNA, Francis Crick, sorry, I had a slip there, came out with a theory of directed panspermia in 1970, published a paper, and that's about all that happened with it because there wasn't enough hard scientific evidence, although it was taken as a scientific theory. And they, like you brought up, first of all, they refuted Darwin's theory, and these were two genetic experts. I mean, these this was the guy that co-discovered DNA. And Leslie Orgel discovered the RNA world. So they knew what they were talking about. And they said life couldn't have originated on Earth, and they gave the reasons why. And their theory was that, and it may be where this gentleman you just talked about got it from, that an alien civilization, very advanced, dispatched a spacecraft full of microorganisms to the Earth. And it had to be at the right time because they could not have flourished. Like I mentioned, on the very early Earth was just toxic. Do you want to go into that more, or what do you think?
Well, let me ask you this about how far back do you think that this all happened?
Oh, we're talking billions of years. They're saying now that the universe is about 15 billion years. But the thing is, if you accept the Big Bang, the early universe, actually close to the center of it, even within a few 100 million years, could have spawned life. You could have had planets that were warm, that were very hospitable to life, much more so than our galaxy, which is not near the center at all. So we could have actually had several evolutions of life in different places. And although I don't think, I mean, you can see even in our solar system that, it's pretty inhospitable to life. And that's probably true in the universe, but it doesn't take that many civilizations to get things going. And the ones that make it through and really evolve very highly, we can already see, if we were to progress exponentially from where we are now for even 1,000 years, who knows what our civilization would be. But if you give a civilization millions of years ahead of us, they would just be miracle workers to us.
To us.
To us. Yes.
So one of the theories that I have put out was that these extraterrestrials actually started terraforming or sent life to Mars first. What do you think of that idea? Before it came to Earth.
Yeah, I think it's quite possible. We're starting to see now, and it's really interesting to me that in my lifetime, it's kind of gone from people snickering about life on Mars to, hey, we just had the announcement that there's water on Mars, flowing water. If there was flowing water, you can bet that they're going to announce that they discovered life. It won't be that far. Now, it's probably microorganisms or even, the ancient microorganisms. But that theory is not ridiculous at all. It's quite possible that happened.
But when I hear it from other people that it's possible or they think that it did happen, you feel vindicated when you put out dates and theories that, just kind of seem a bit out there.
Well, I first, in my first book, The Genesis Race, I mentioned that there was water on Mars. In alien civilizations, I don't know if you noticed, but you'll understand this and appreciate it. I published it on it came out the same day that NASA announced that they found flowing water on Mars. That was released the very same day, and my first chapter is that there's water out there. I knew they were going to announce this. I mean, that's partly why I got up and published it when I did. I didn't know the exact date, but that's just happened to be the way it worked out. And when you have water, and they're finding water on satellites and planets out there, and the signatures of water way out in interstellar space, that means that there's life out there. Where you have water, you're going to have life. So even science now, it's gone from, the so-called fringe, with what debunkers like to call pseudoscientists, into the mainstream, that we know there's life out there. Scientists they say there's life out there. The only dispute now that we have in the community, the controversy is, has it ever been on Earth? And of course, the ancient alien people present the evidence that it has. And scientists will say, no, they don't see the evidence that it has. Truth is, they haven't looked at it.
Well, I think they see the evidence and then just choose to ignore it. It's
Yes.
like selective hearing.
Exactly. And that has to do with politics. People get a little, they don't understand that science is also political, like everything human beings do. It's politicized, and there are lines drawn, and they don't want to step over those lines because it offends too many people, too many interest groups, so they just stand back.
Yeah, it's sad. That whole paradigm needs to change. But well, I think that's a topic for a different interview because
I agree.
that's
It's huge.
it's
It's huge.
huge. It's huge. Do you think the extraterrestrials? I mean, because if we're doing a directed panspermia implantation, do you think the extraterrestrials actually came to the planet physically and put stuff here? Do you think that they used comets or meteors as the transport mechanism? How do you think they got these early cells here?
Well, that's a good, and you make some good points there. And I think what you said is what happened. That originally they would have used different means to just transport, the mechanisms to get life going. Eventually, when it got going, and we know the steps, we know that microorganisms, blue-green algae, and so on, then evolved. I think that then they injected at different points, and because this is where evolutionists, paleontologists have had a hard time. They go out in the field and they don't find the fossils they expect to find. They're not in sequence. There's nothing there. So they came up with this idea. Well, at some point, the planet just suddenly, spits out new life, that we get this big injection of a whole new regime of life, which was from, simple trees and simple organisms to flowering plants and bees and, pollinators and so on, because they all go together. They just suddenly emerge. They suddenly appear. So I think, that really strongly suggests there's an external input that was involved throughout this. And yes, they came, and the reason I say they came is because of the Great Pyramid and different artifacts that we find, as well as what our ancestors said. And I strongly dispute academics, dismissing what our ancestors said and claiming it's all myths and, make-believe. I don't think that's the way our ancestors were.
Well, I mean, there was an article I read that was talking about an Australian tribe who were talking about, and I don't remember the exact details, but that there was water and trees in this one area of Australia. And, their mythology said that, and the scientists were like, wah, brah, it's a bunch of whatever. And then they started doing some research in that area, and they found out that there were trees and there was running water, and it was 10,000 years old when that whole ecosystem changed. And so it validated that they had this memory, this mythic memory that went back at least 10,000 years.
Absolutely. And you see the same thing in North Africa, where like at the Tassili caves, where we have a lot of very interesting, tens of thousands of, cave paintings and rock art that depict alien beings, but they also depict lions, elephants, antelope that were in North Africa 10,000 years ago. So the people were right there. North Africa was green, there was water, and now scientists, climatologists have verified that yes, Africa was like that.
I'm just going to kind of jump on a little bit of a tangent here. What do you think of the Inca Stones? The South American stones that some of them show like pictures of dinosaurs. Do you think that those are authentic?
Some of them are. And of course, the problem is some of them aren't. The ones that are have a patina that shows that they're ancient. The new ones don't. The ones that there was a gentleman that was duplicating them and making money, and he admitted it. But there are others that are ancient. And the fascinating thing about that is, where are we talking about? We're talking about the area where the elongated skulls were found. It's very close to Paracas. It's very close to the Nazca lines and to a pyramid culture there. But not only that, this is one of the hot spots in the world for dinosaur fossils.
Really? I didn't know that.
That is one of the hot spots. Right there at Paracas is where people go. around the world. They go there to collect fossils.
So you can get an elongated head and a dinosaur bone all in the same trip.
Well, you can see them. You can certainly see. You can certainly see the elongated skulls, and that in itself, is well. I don't know. We got to be careful because we've got a huge topic here.
Yeah.
So
okay. So let's go back to. It sounds like what you were saying a little earlier was they came, they implanted some early genetic material, early blue-green algae. I like that term on the planet. Hung around for a while. And instead of it just being us evolving over time and then 3.8 billion years ago, poof, here we are, talking on the computer, you feel like there was definite intervention that happened during different periods of time.
Yes, and while we have we have the Sumerians, we have different groups, the Dogon and so on. So we have civilizations and more primitive cultures basically saying the same thing, that there was intervention by an advanced race that our academics say the gods, and that's all mythology and make-believe. Well, I don't think we should be dismissing what our ancestors said in that way. They meant beings. They meant physical beings came, taught them things, brought agriculture, did genetic engineering, and I think we have to take that seriously and look at all the evidence. Mm-hmm. The Egyptians didn't build the Great Pyramid, and we have evidence in Peru and Turkey and all over the place that people have been. Why do we have enigmas? If the scientific paradigm was right, we would not have one enigma.
Well, they say that the simplest answer is usually the right answer. And if you look at all of the enigmas that we find and say aliens, it gets rid of all of the enigmas. Exactly.
And then it's a continuum from history, right? Mm-hmm. Then we agree with our ancestors who were trying to just pass the truth down so we could survive, that, hey, we didn't do this. Not one of the cultures takes credit for the things that our academics give them credit for. Nobody says that they invented agriculture or bronze or created all these incredible...
Fire. Something so basic.
Yeah, nobody takes the credit for all this stuff, and you know how we are. We take credit for everything. If you make a stamp, if it's us, we take credit for it.
And then we sell it. Three shells.
If we did it, believe the whole universe would know it.
Okay, so these extraterrestrials, do you think, there are people even in the ancient alien community that they're like, Anunnaki, 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 and there isn't anybody else. Do you think it was just the Anunnaki? Do you think that we were visited by multiple groups and they all kind of took their turns implanting stuff in us?
I more think that it was different groups that were involved. I don't think it was just one race. And the evidence we see around the planet, if it was just one race, we would have had, 5,000 years ago, one language, and we don't have one language. The Egyptians had a language, and in fact, the Sumerians had a language isolate. They had a language not related to anybody else's language. They were all Semitic-speaking people around them. So that's an interesting question because it gets pretty complex when you look at human history and how, this whole the Babel, basically. Now we have 200 nations and we have thousands of languages, and it gets pretty tangled up. I don't think there was just one race. I don't disagree with Sitchin. I think he did a lot of good work, and he was a very serious researcher. And those are the basic issues. But when I talk about Genesis race, it's more of a synthetic concept that I can use as a scientific theory. And you understand that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's not just the Anunnaki. We're talking about that life originated elsewhere in the universe and was brought here.
But I think it's important to hear that opinion that it wasn't just the Anunnaki. That there were, from my research, and I'm just going to throw this in, you hear descriptions of gods that have very different looks and characteristics.
Exactly.
That it's like, okay, so if you're going to buy this culture's mythology, they're fighting with these people, so who are they? Because they obviously aren't Anunnakis.
Exactly. And if you look at the ancient Egyptians, the pharaohs, they have elongated skulls. They wore those. I sometimes wonder when people look at the pharaohs, do they wonder why do they have these huge 3-foot tall, this headgear on? Well, when you look at their skulls, you can see why.
But I thought they haven't uncovered any remains of an elongated skull, a true elongated skull in Egypt.
Well, they're not as elongated. If you look at the skull of even Tutankhamun and his father, they were elongated. They're not a normal size skull, but they're not as elongated as the ones in Peru. They don't look quite like that. And also, you have to ask why, and people have for a long time, why were human beings artificially deforming their heads for so long? And tribes did it all over the planet. Somebody saw, there were some kind of rulers that people were looking up to as superior, and then they tried to model their own, their children after that. Because I can't believe that women just decided one day, well, I'll change my baby's head. I'll put him through.
And have the technology to do that and not kill them or, make them be mentally challenged.
Yeah, we talk about traumatization and, wrapping up a baby's head and keeping it bound for a long time until it changes shape. And that went on for a long time. And in fact, into the 19th century it was going on. So we have that in history too. And then we have evidence. If you look at the sculptures in the Cairo Museum, you can see some elongated heads in there. And so I think, but getting back to your point, you don't see that in the Anunnaki. I don't see them depicted like that. Now
That's a good point. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Although they do have the horn-shaped, or Enki has the horn-shaped helmet thing that he wears.
But I think your point was right that there was a multiplicity of different beings. And how do we know? We can only guess. How do they cooperate? Is there some kind of a cosmic federation? Are there rules and laws they go by? We can speculate, but at this point, I don't think we can know.
Yeah.
I would assume there are, but I also don't see us. I don't understand why people depict aliens as the Greys. I don't understand why they think the aliens might be hostile to us. They were benefactors. They're not hostile. They could have wiped us out any time if they were hostile.
Yeah, once you start getting into things that are off the planet, it's, it becomes so much speculation that it's like...
We got to deal with first things first, right?
I'm not going to disagree and say that, it's bull. I just don't know and don't really know what to do with it.
Exactly, and I agree. And I put some things in this book that I can't verify, but that are out there that I think people, and I'm talking now not just about the ancient aliens, because my concept now is ancient aliens, yes, we deal with that body of data, but we also deal with modern UFOs and with scientific research, because it's all converging now. And if you read the headlines, you can see it's converging. If a science fiction person would have talked about alien megastructures, they would have been laughed at. Or if I talked, now all of a sudden, in the last 2 months, we've got, physicists telling us they're seeing alien megastructures out there. I didn't make that up. So what are they talking about all of a sudden? Yeah, what are they talking about? A Dyson sphere. And it's like most people never heard of that. And now they're talking about, they think they're seeing one out there. So I don't see
I don't even know what a Dyson sphere is. When I hear that word, I think vacuum cleaners. Sorry.
Well, it's a very elaborate vacuum cleaner. No, it's a spherical shaped. It's kind of like imagine solar collectors around a solar system, a sun, that are beaming energy back in as a civilization uses energy, like we're doing more and more and more.
Oh, okay.
See, then it starts. The concept comes to try to conserve that energy, to recycle it, and not let it just go off into space. Spheres. Now they think they see Dyson spheres out there.
On some of the planets that they're looking at that they think might be inhabitable.
Right, and they can detect it through shifts in light and different ways. So it's now none of this sounds as far out anymore because we are in the process of disclosure, and it's going to come piecemeal because people have to understand too how our science works. Science is very compartmentalized. It doesn't talk to each other very much. So you'll have one group putting information out and another group saying, no, and on and on and on. So you've got to make up your own mind here. You've got to sort through this stuff. And where do modern UFOs fit in? See, to me, it's all a continuum. It's like you said earlier. It's simple. If you just strip away the complexity and what makes you confused, you see that it's simple. We're in an open universe. Life is everywhere. Intelligence is everywhere. We're part of it, and we're waking up to it. But we think we're evolved, and we're not very evolved.
No. And on that note, we need to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk about what humanity is. And I'm just going to kind of leave it on a weird hanging note. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, we're here talking to Will Hart about his new book, and I'm trying to get this in the camera, Alien Civilizations, and we'll be right back. If you're enjoying this programming, please do become a Just Energy Radio insider to hear the entire interview. Go to justenergyradio.com.